Morning guys, welcome back to the channel, and if this is your first time here, I sure appreciate you stopping in. Guys, this morning we're going to talk about the strategy, if you will, here and what's about to change. You're probably seeing this video, I'm hoping probably the 17th or 18th, something like that, of October. So fit this to where you're at in the country. Notice it doesn't say October or specifically October, November, wherever you're at in the country, guys. Obviously, the further south you are, the later that this is going to be. Midwest, here in Kentucky, this is going to be, relevant the middle of October and going towards the end of October, and really get that mindset on what really is that change in strategy. So we're going to start with this one, guys, and we're going to get right to the point here, because I think this is very, very crucial, very important on the successful steps that we have ahead of us, in the season. So the topic here, right, is best early season stand. I think there are some distinct differences, right, guys, that I think most folks, especially bow hunters, really understand, right, that bed to food pattern. But I think some of the strategies, when we look at that, we forget maybe about some how-to or some methods to take maybe a good stand and make it a great stand. So first and foremost, up until this point, I really encourage you to look back and think, okay, how many AM sits did I do? We're really PM focused on these early season hunts. First and foremost, no AM sits, guys. It's so hard, especially like a week ago there when you threw that full moon in. It's so hard to get in front of those deer going back into bedding areas that you do more harm than you do good, and you're actually ruining that great PM potential. So because there's just so much cooler temps, maybe the winds get right, more predictable winds, being able to get into the farm when them deer are bedded. Stuff like that, instead of running, head into each other on the way in the morning. I think it's just everybody wants to be, especially October 1st, right, is opening day. Here in Kentucky, it was the 6th of September this year, and everybody wants to be in the tree, and I totally get that. But the only way that you start looking at these AM sits is really thinking, okay, what are the chances, or what is the weather doing, right? We're watching for that front. Last week was a perfect example. I was blessed enough to have my boy in camp with a good friend of mine and his boy, and they were close. They all had excellent hunts, and we implemented some morning hunts. And the reason for that is the day before they got here, it was 80. The afternoon temps the day they were here were in the high 60s, and we had low temps in the mid 40s. So 20-degree drop. So it doesn't have to be a cold front, right? It doesn't have to be a 20, 30 degree drop in temperature, right? It doesn't have to be snowing. It doesn't have to be freezing. It just has to be a drop. And when you're talking 5 to 10 degrees, maybe not, right? But when you're talking 20 in October, it really can be powerful. So we threw them in on some AM hunts, and even then, they got in the stand. My boy, for example, had a buck, I'm not sure, kind of a half-rack, 3.5-year-old deer that needs to go. And I'm not sure if he would have shot him or not, but he was at this, there before daylight, and you couldn't see him, obviously, way too early before legal hunting hours, and he couldn't see him anyway. So, I mean, it's not that it can't happen, but if you're going to implement them AM hunts, guys, really watch. Make sure, when I say bulletproof, it's not a question, right? I know I can get in there, and I know I can get out. I'm ahead of them. Maybe that's through some screening that you planted. Maybe that's the contour, using that geographical feature on the farm. Whatever that case is, going through an open pasture where there's no deer in it, or a pasture with cattle in it, something like that, where you can blow that scent into, or you can get across there, because sadly, most of the times that's not the case. We're doing more harm than good. So like I said, no AM hunts unless these cold fronts, but just watch the front itself. So, for example, October 11th is the day that the farm here in Kentucky has a lot of power. Going back days, it's a separate video we have coming here, But I mean, I can track it back, and you know, so is that cold front a day or two ahead, whatever that is. But I'm always watching that because it and it rang true again this year. It's just got a lot of pull. So not saying you can't do it, just make sure it really, really, really is a bulletproof situation, that you're not going to mess something up. You know, during that time, right? We have so much more good left in the season. We don't want to set ourselves backwards, guys. I think number 3 here, and an early season hunt in October. This probably, guys, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Most, you know, a lot of people look at me and you know, I get a lot of criticism about this, but over the years. But I'm telling you right now, I would rather have a water hole than I would a food plot. Right now, I'm not sure I would own a farm that I couldn't plant a food plot on, or multiple, but water, guys, is a huge, huge, huge piece of the puzzle. The perfect spot, early season hunt, guys, is a water hole that you can hunt PM. The best water hole is if you can find one you can hunt AM and PM if the contour allows it. But a PM hunt, southwest winds, something like that. If you can try to find that location, or if you're setting it up, if you're building the farm, guys, that's a powerful, powerful piece of the puzzle that is so often overlooked. So don't overlook this one, especially going into the second part of this video. When that starts changing, when this hunt strategy starts changing, when these temperatures start getting better, when we start creeping up on like the 27th of October, boy, guys, you're going to wish that you had that opportunity at that water hole as well, because that spot just keeps getting better. So when we are looking at stand location and talking about stand location, guys, there's a couple stand locations that jump right out to me that would fall into that best situation, right? That best location. Like I said, as far as, you know, hunters, bow hunters especially, we're all trained to be between bed and food. There's so many moving parts, I think, that are overlooked at that we're going to talk about here, but I think in what I call an inline hunt, right, between bed and food. So this situation right here, guys, would be a known bedding area, a representation of a known bedding area and a known food source. That could be oaks, that could be a food plot, you know, a planted manicured food plot. What I'm encouraging you to do in this strategy is find a halfway mark between that bed and that food. And on these PM early season hunts, play towards the food plot half, not the bedding half on a PM hunt. So you may have to, depending on when that buck is getting to that, that food plot location, there's a fine line there between going too far into the bedding area. So you might have to creep back, guys, but I always recommend don't initially plan on going more than halfway. That is, and with the correct habitat built, you can definitely make that. You have to be able to get into that spot, and you have to be able to get out. Not too close to bedding, not too close to food. What I find going into the other step of this video here, guys, what I find is too many folks find that best stand. You've heard me talk about that best stand syndrome, right? My favorite stand syndrome, not best stand syndrome, favorite stand syndrome. And what happens is that stand probably could be, you know, better in a week or two, and we're pushing into it too early and we're too close to bedding. And what happens is, you know, them deer are ahead of us, you're blowing them out, you're creating, you're creating some pressure that them deer aren't getting to those food sources. All that ties in. So always err on the side of caution and go halfway towards your food sources. But like we said here, guys, if you can implement water here and you can be off the edge of that food plot, sadly, most of the folks that I see when they're hanging these stands are right here, right? We're right on the food plot. What I refer to that is, guys, you are at that point, you are sitting on the end of the rainbow, the pot of gold, if you will, at the end of the rainbow, and you are just hoping and praying that that deer, multiple deer, make it to that food source. So you better hope at that point, one, it's unpressured. Two, your food plot architecture is right, that he actually is within range, because sadly I see a lot of folks sitting on this and just relying on a scrape post or a licking branch that they put in out here in the center of this 2-acre field or acre field, and you know, you're not able to connect with that, guys. That deer enters that shot plot or food plot, right? Like we say, the difference between, you should be able to harvest that deer if he's going to be in that field. And in most of the case, we're hunting food plots. It's too big. The architecture part of it's not there. We're not funneling deer into an area. And so what happens is, right, it creates pressure because you can't get out of there after dark. Just because it's dark doesn't mean you're getting out unscathed or free without busting deer. So always make sure, guys, this is kind of the representation of a no-brainer perfect set. So halfway point, add water there, be off the food plot, don't be this guy, and try to get in and out of there undetected. And so your water hole's there, your stand would be here, your access right is in here. Try to use that mindset when applying these early season stands. The second one we're going to go to here, guys, I think is a very, very powerful piece of the puzzle, but is very, very overlooked. So again, an inline hunt, that I call an inline hunt, right? Known bedding, known food source. So one thing that I think a lot of folks can learn with this situation is when this is bedding, right? You have to tell yourself, what bedding is this? Yes, I know we get a lot of hate mail and a lot of everything on there. I clone these as doe bedding versus buck bedding. And the reason for that is, guys, you can say that when you have multiple. You can't say that if you have just one designated bedding area. And why I say that, guys, is because if you have one and it's the only one, it can be 100 to 200 yards away from that food source, and those does are probably going to take it over because it's the first correct habitat. So a lot of folks build these thinking they're going to get in between bedding and food, but you're ahead of the does, right? And it's so, because if this is doe bedding and this is 100 yards, your bucks are behind here, right? So before that buck even gets to where the does were, let alone the food plot, it's dark. So you have to remember what you have, right? Now, if it's a leased property and it's just, permission property or state ground or something, you found bedding, you just, early season, hopefully that, that is a secluded area and that is where that buck is hanging out. Your trail camera information will probably tell you that, right? Now, moving into this situation where we have a chance, like a private land situation where we have a chance to have multiple bedding areas, that's where this gets real powerful, and I see this strategy working way, way better. But there's a problem with this strategy that a lot of folks, initially do. So known bedding, putting this in 100 to 200 yards off from the food source, so you can get in, hunting on a shot plot, let's say, or a food plot, let's say, right? But most folks don't have a couple strategies in mind. Most folks have this feeder location that I have over here, guys. They're putting it right here. And like I said, sometimes the architecture isn't correct and the field's too big. I'm looking at trying to make this field maybe a bow tie feature where it's narrower in the center, big on both ends, and I'm in the center of that. But instead of having that food plot here, or that feeder here, guys, always remember that the perfect entrance for a buck early season, when any time of the season, but especially early season, when he's coming into those feeders, that J hook approach, there's a lot to be said for that, because it's a security blanket at that time, right? They have to use their nose and their eyes, and he wants to get downwind of that feeder. And if you get him in a spot here where he can't get downwind of it, a lot of times it forces that dark movement. That security that he wants is going to have to come with dark. So if you have a spot that you can keep unpressured, and this situation's a big bank down here that you walk up to or something. I have one of them on one of my leases where it's a big pond down here. We enter in the bank from behind it, and they can't get downwind of it. The food plot is as far as they can get downwind of it. Then you're kind of forcing him to play his card when he's going to that feeder location, because he can't get on the back side of you. Most most stand locations aren't that way. A lot of folks leave that door open, if you will, behind the feeder. Well, that puts him behind the stand or waiting until dark to get there. So it's all about security. It's, you know, each one is different. So just remember, guys, what I would like to do here is, if that food plot architecture isn't right, add a blocker. You know, I've got one here on the farm that's on a shot plot, and my food plot and my feeder are 100 yards from it, but I'm hunting a shot plot on the way, kind of this situation. This would be a shot plot, and then my food plot, my feeder is way out here, and I'm just hunting that movement past it. I've got one of these blockers. We use the cattle panel, the welded wire cattle panel. You can fell some trees. You can make a brush berm. A lot of different things to do. But putting a blocker, so these deer have to come around the end of it, and then adding a scrape on the end of it, a scrape tree on the end of it, something like that. That forces him, right, to be able to come within that 25 yard, 30 yard, your comfortable range, you know, bring him around. Don't be afraid to put these blockers in. I don't know where this nonsense started about you can't use a blocker, you can't use fences. We're not fencing deer in. We are just manipulating movement, right? And there's just a huge thing out there. You would be surprised on how many, you know, negative Nancy's I get that are in my inbox saying, well, you used a fence and that's not ethical. Well, that's hogwash, because it's not a fenced in. Now, if I was in a, you know, 40-acre enclosure, that's a fence. This is not a fence. This is a blocker, right? So don't listen to that nonsense. Use these blockers to your advantage. Like I said, cattle panel, woven wire, trees, just brush structure, stumps, whatever. There's a lot of stuff you can use. But what I'm saying, guys, about this bedding here, hear me out on this, is if you have option to put 2 of these locations, what you have, these does that are out here in this feeding location, this food plot, they want to be within that first 100-yard rim of that food plot, right, and that feeder. So what you do is, if you're able to build them correct habitat on that food source for this early season approach, right, what you want, guys, is you want to be able to let them does come out to that food source, and you then are between these bedded, this other bedding area that we're going to call buck bedding, because all the drama is out on the food source, opens the door for this bedding area to now have a potential to hold a buck. Now you're in between him and the food plot, or him and the feeder, him and the does, right? So leading into this, so we'll finish this one. Instead of putting the feeder here, guys, I highly recommend, if you know that this is known bedding, or if your bedding is over here, depending on how this plays out, right? If you know this is bedding, especially if this is a north or northwest wind situation, you can move, don't put the feeder here. Even though you can't shoot it with a bow, it will shock you the huntability of this food source when you take the feeder away. Right, and put it, still keep it in sight for with a gun that you can shoot it. You'd be crazy not to be able to cover it, but move it over here to the corner of the food plot and force him, drag that long linear movement past you, and now that's how you create this vacuum, if you will, guys, right? Get these bedded does, they're going to come out here in the food plot, they're going to cycle around, a lot of them probably are going to hit the licking branch, they're going to end up over here, and you're dragging this buck past. The reason, guys, going into step 2, the reason that this is so important is because you can then hunt this strategy longer into the next week or 2 than you can hunt this, right? Your only saving grace on this situation is that water hole, because if you're hunting inline movement early season, you need to X this out. If this water hole isn't here, you need to X this stand location out. It's a waste of time as the season goes until we get back into late season hunting styles are a lot like early season hunting styles. But there's a month window, guys, that this becomes my favorite stand syndrome, and your profitability in that stand goes in the toilet. Where this situation now can be, with a little tweak, can be and is a possible way to hunt this through the pre-rut and still be successful, maybe even on an AM hunt, on a shot plot, right? So let's go into this one, guys, and I'm going to go deeper into this in upcoming videos. How you make this, guys, you have to understand this situation can be good going into the next 2 or 3 weeks, the end of October, maybe if you're in the Midwest or you're here in Kentucky, you're up north in Michigan. The pre-rut, if you're down south, wherever that is, maybe that's the end of October, or I'm sorry, end of November. Maybe that's the first week of December, depending on where you're at in the country. This situation, guys, can be, I'd make it a little bit better, but it can be a good situation. Just by tweaking this a little bit. Most folks, guys, 2 weeks from now want to hunt this right here, right through the season, right? There's a problem with this, though. You have to be able to think outside the box on how you make this situation work for you. How do you make it better during the pre-rut and the rut? So I think what we'll do, guys, is we'll save this. We're going to clone this on the next video. We're going to make this the hot topic, if you will, going into the second segment of this 2-part video. So let this one kind of get your mind churning. Maybe you're at, the middle of October here. You made it through the lull, right? And all of a sudden now your strategy, your mindset starts changing. I'm going to share a couple things with you guys that are really, really going to be important on this step. So let's get to this step on segment 2. Thanks, guys.